republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting is being live streamed by Chelmsford Telemedia and posted to the CPS website for interested community members to access and watch. In-person public participation will be taking place tonight in accordance with the Chelmsford School Committee public participation policy. Anyone speaking tonight during the public input portion of the meeting is notified the superintendent's office of the desire to speak and has been provided with these guidelines. Upon request, written comments received no later than 12 p.m. on the day of this meeting will also be read and made a part of the record of the meeting during the second public comment session. So welcome to this meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee. We don't have any minutes tonight, so we're going to go right to our student reps.
All right, Spirit Week is upcoming at the high school. Kicking it off on Thursday is Pajama Day, followed by Friday being Scrabble Day, Monday being Pajama Day, and Tuesday being Dress as a Teacher Day, and Wednesday is School Spirit Day for the pep rally. The CHS Theater Guild is having their Beauty and the Beast play very, very soon, starting this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. There will also be shows on Friday and Saturday, them being from one being at 1 p.m. and the second being at 7:30, and that's for both days. This will be hosted at the Chelmsford PAC. The CHS Homecoming Dance is upcoming this Tuesday. It is open to all grades, and tickets are sold at lunches. At lunches, it'll be sold until Monday. It will go on from 7 to 9 p.m. Also on this day is the CHS Powder Puff football game at the Simonian Stadium from 2:30 to 3:30.
Hi, everyone. So this Thursday at 9:30 a.m. in our gym will be the signing day for our athletes that sign their NLI at the D1, D2, or committed to play at the D3 level. And this Friday, our Chelmsford High School South Asian Student Association will be hosting Garba Night at the cafeteria. And then the class of 2027 will be hosting a Chelmsford Lights contest. Houses will be judged using the following criteria of visual design, presentation, best use of lights, festive or funny theme, community spirit, and their overall presentation and wow factor. Judging will happen by the students and advisors of the class of 2027 the week of December 15th to the 22nd, with winners announced on the 22nd. There will be a kickoff on December 15th at the high school with free hot chocolate and cookies with dinner from Heavenly Hot Dogs. To enter for this competition, you can sign up using the form in the CHS Class Reps 27 Instagram bio or flyers, or I can try to share that with someone here if people are interested in signing up. But you do have to pay $20 to enter, but the winners will receive some prize. So good luck to the people that sign up.
Great, thank you. If you're looking for any clothes for Teacher Day, you know, I dress like a teacher day. So. All right, any good news?
Yep, I have one piece of good news. So we had 18 CHS students that were selected to participate in the Massachusetts Music Educator Association's auditions for their Northeast Senior District Music Ensembles. See how I had to read that? So, and we also had several students who secured their first chair for their musical instrument positions.
Great, nice. Anybody else have any good news they want to share? Okay, all right. So we don't have any speakers for public comment, so we'll move right into new business.
Yeah, we're going to jump right in. First up on the agenda this evening is a presentation from South Row. So we have several South Row staff members with us. I'll let them just introduce themselves. And we'll hear a little bit about what's happening at South Row this year. So Terry, we'll turn it over to you. And
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us.
Introduce everyone.
Terry Gilbert, the principal at South Row. We have some special guests here tonight. Allison Heavey is a special educator at South Row. Amanda Kellerman is a fourth grader that is new to us from Harrington this year. And of course, Jason Romalo, assistant principal. It's his birthday, by the way.
happy birthday.
And yeah, so we're here to just share some information about the push-in model for special education at South Row School. So the last few years, we've really made an effort to expand the push-in model and to build capacity in staff. So it's not always appropriate, but in some cases it is appropriate for students to receive their special education services in the classroom. So we've spent a lot of time looking at data, working with staff to try to expand that model. So Allison and Amanda do the push-in model in fourth grade for an hour of math and an hour of reading. We do have the push-in model across all grade levels, but fourth grade is the one where we have the most amount of hours with a special educator pushing in. So there's lots of benefits. They're going to talk to you about the benefits, some barriers, kind of what that model looks like. For some students, they may have like started an education plan with a pullout model, and then over time, they've made successes and we're able to push them in, say, the following year. Some students might have like split services where they might be in the classroom for math and they might be out of the classroom for reading. But our goal is really, first of all, time on learning is a big benefit to students staying in the classroom, and the motivation to kind of be around their peers. And Allison and Amanda can talk a little bit more about that.
Great. Oh, sorry.
So we thought we'd start by going over what is this push-in model. So essentially, the special education teacher, who is Allison, pushes into our classroom, and she's essentially supporting students on IEPs alongside the general education students. And we like to laugh that Allison lives with us. So there's so much of the day where Allison is with us that by the end of the day, you can't really tell who's the true teacher anymore. But we also have a full-time paraeducator with us. So when Allison cannot be with us, we do have someone else supporting us throughout the classroom as well.
Okay, so there's a lot of benefits that come with this push-in model. So first, all students meet with each teacher. So yes, I'm the case manager, liaison for these special education students, but that doesn't mean that I'm not working with every single student in the classroom. Amanda is also working with all of my special education students as well as the general education population in the classroom. Special education students get direct instruction from both teachers with their peers. So when we kind of organize groups for math, we do all small group teaching. So when we organize groups for math and for reading, we look at data and we pair kids who are on an IEP, but also with maybe kids that might need a little more support as well. That might be part of in the SST process, or they might be getting reading interventionist or math interventionist. Small group instruction benefits special education students along with the general education students who may need more support. I just touched upon that. It also eases transition to middle school as students are working with multiple teachers. So in the middle school, students see multiple teachers, one for reading and social studies, one for math and science. So this kind of eases that transition in understanding what that feels like, and greater opportunity for accommodations and differentiation in the general education classroom. So because I'm in the classroom for so much of the day, I can see what accommodations students need in the classroom, or what they benefit from. Maybe they benefit from more graphic organizers for math. Maybe they benefit from using a highlighter to highlight word problems. So I'm able to kind of see that, and then that also leads me into being able to write their IEPs with a sense of them being in the classroom more instead of being pulled out. Okay.
So also the benefits is that since like Allison is in the room with us so much, she's able to see our kids in the environment that they are the most used to. She's able to see the kids not only during academic time, but also non-academic time as well. And she's able to help with that social emotional needs, or those transition needs, or those executive functioning needs, where in the past, if she wasn't with me, I would have to go and talk to her and be like, hey, I'm noticing someone's really struggling with XYZ, and we'd have to come up with a plan. But now she's here, we both just look at each other, we go, okay, we need to fix this, and here's what we're gonna do. And we're both able to see it in order to make those decisions moving forward. There's also increased time on learning due to less transition. No one leaves, so there's no one's leaving. So you're stuck with me all day. And they're able to transition just between the two of us too, which makes it a lot easier. And they're practicing those transitions. And they feel more a part of our community because again, no one's leaving. everyone is getting serviced in our classroom. And it's also just they're able to have more access to role models as you're with all your friends. No one ever wants to leave their friends. So they're able to, we're able to use our other students who could be role models and point out, okay, maybe when we need to take out our folders, like, let's all see how X is doing it. And then we're able to have, pair them specifically for that as well. So we thought we'd also go over what this looks like in our room. So for reading rotations, we have 4 rotations daily, and they're each just about 15 minutes. And like Allison mentioned, we've spent a lot of time both this summer and this fall going over their data and building groups based on achievement levels and areas of growth. So that way we're getting the most bang for our buck when we have those groups. The kids get 2 rotations of guided reading, so meeting with a teacher, reading a book. And the very cool thing is they meet with each of us. Both every week we switch off. So I'll take 2 groups and Allison will take 2 groups, and the following week we'll switch. And students are able to meet with both of us, and we're working on the same skill set, just at different levels for all of our students. So we always the kids meet with us twice every day, and then the final 2 rotations are something along the lines of phonics or our iReady time, where they're getting those individualized lessons and other activities to meet our standards and goals.
Okay. So this is kind of what a general reading rotation looks like. So the one in the middle means reading rotation 1, and it will just switch every 15 minutes. Where it says the groups, group 1, 2, 3, 4, those I have the student names in them. So every single kid is in a group, and then they look up there, where do I need to go? Amanda is fantastic at putting those visuals up there, so they see, okay, that table, Miss Kellerman sits at, the rectangular table, Mrs. Heavy's at, this is what I need, this is where I'm going, these are the materials I need, and it's a well-oiled machine in there. They, the timer goes off, they look to the board, they say, okay, that's where I need to go, those are materials I need, and then, they're off. And then 15 minutes later, it moves and they know exactly where to go.
So math, we follow a very similar model. We use 20 minutes rotations, and there again 4 of them, and it spells out the word math. So we have meet with teacher, where they'll meet with me, the general education teacher, and I'm typically introducing our new topic. Then they'll go to activity, which is where we're reviewing skills or reinforcing skills. So that's where Allison will meet with everyone and work on our previous lessons or previous skills and continue to accommodate and modify and ensure we're all getting what we need to get at that time. Then tech time is, of course, iReady Math. And then hands-on, this is where the kids will do a game related to either a past topic or like multiplication facts. And they're working with partners, so they're working together in a group, and we always have our paraeducator there to support our students as well.
So this is what a typical math rotation looks like. Again, similar to reading rotations. It spells out math at the top. On the bottom would be the kids would be grouped, so they'd see their names. Okay, I'm meeting with Miss Kellerman, I'm going to activity. They know exactly by the visual where they're going, what their job is, what materials they need. And again, it's a well-oiled machine. They know exactly what to do. The timer goes off, and then they will switch. This will go so kids that are on, let's say, meet with Miss K for rotation 1, then the next rotation they'll be on the activity. So it just goes in order. So this is data we pulled. The data that kind of shows how beneficial this kind of model is. So the data on the left is math scores from our unit tests so far this year. And as you can see, aside from one of the scores, they do pretty well. These tests are with accommodations. They are given visuals. They are given graphic organizers. They are able to use things that help them be successful. And we also do basically all assessments in small groups. So I generally take my students that are on my caseload to a small group table. Ms. Kellerman takes kids that maybe need more support to a small group table. Then we have some kids that maybe don't need support at their own desks. And then the data on the right is from last year. So I've actually been doing this model this is my 3rd year. So before Amanda, for 2 years in a row, I was working with another 4th grade teacher. And the first year I worked I was just in there for reading. Last year, we moved it up to reading and math. So as you can see, this is iReady math data from last year from my special education students. So in the fall, 2 of those students who actually were pulled out previously for math with me for ever since kindergarten were in the red. After being in this kind of model, those 2 students were in the yellow. And you can see how much growth all those kids have made over the year.
This is same school year.
So the right-hand side is from last year. So yes, it's fall and then spring.
Same school year.
Yeah.
That's a lot of growth.
Yeah, amazing. So.
And then we also just wanted to talk about some barriers that we've encountered as well, because we know this isn't the most perfect model, but we've tried our best. So one thing, there is a huge increased time commitment for both myself and Allison. We meet weekly on top of all of our other meetings. So we meet to plan out both reading and math, all of that, and to have to find that time within both of our busy schedules that don't always line up, which goes to our next one, finding calming planning time. This year, we're lucky we both have the same prep at the same time, but we meet in the morning, we meet in the afternoon, depending on, to make sure we have all of our lessons.
And I would say we don't always just meet for consults. We meet, probably once a day, just on the fly. Today, we were talking about, some students. I'm assessing them for their progress reports and how much growth they've made since the beginning of the year for their reading level. And, their reading rates haven't gone up significantly. So we were just consulting about what could we do differently moving forward into term 2. Different reading assignments, how could the paraeducator help? So we're constantly talking, but it's a huge time commitment. Mm-hmm. And meeting multiple needs in one room, there are a lot of needs in the room. Social, emotional, kids on IEPs. It's not just when we do we have a very large placement process, thanks to Jason. When in the spring, we'll start placing students for next year, and we having this model, we really look to not just kids on IEPs, but also kids that might have been on SST, they might have 504s, they might just need that extra support. So being able to put them in a classroom like this with a special educator, with this kind of support, it's a lot. But I think Amanda and I work really well together, which also brings us to our next point, is incorporating multiple styles of teaching. This doesn't always work, right? It works for us because we work really well together, and we are very big proponents of small group teaching, but not all teachers, like moving forward, they want to do this. This involves Amanda teaching the same lesson 4 times in 1 hour for math. That can be a lot, and it can be a huge undertaking instead of just standing up and teaching one lesson to the whole group. So that could be a barrier. And do you want to talk about the next one?
Annual meetings pull both adults from the room together, which doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but our kids are so routine that we've taken their 2 teachers, pulled them both out, and now it's so unexpected for them that it's a really hard transition. So we have to put a lot of thought into my sub-plans and how I'm going to do it to make my room somewhat run for an hour when they're used to just always having two full teachers in the room and our para. And then the last one we kind of talked about is there's a lot of extra stimuli in our classroom, which can be overwhelming. There's both of us are teaching at the same time. We're on different sides of the room and we're trying to be understanding, but the pods are not the biggest areas either. So we're trying so hard to not duel against each other. And then the kids who aren't with us are also trying to drown both of us out so they can focus on their lesson as well. So it can just be a lot sometimes for students who struggle with that.
Yeah, and just to that point, like we have a student this year who I think the small group teaching is good for him, but I think the extra stimuli with all the transitions, because they're transitioning every 20 minutes, every 15 minutes in reading and math. He has to look up at the board. He has to get the right materials. He has to go to the appropriate place. It's a lot for him. So like we've just been trying to come up with another idea to help him with those transitions. So it's not for everybody, but it definitely, there's just so many benefits that outweigh the barriers.
Thank you, yeah, and I just want to truly thank Mrs. Heavey and Mrs. Kellerman for embracing this model. I know you all know too well, one of our strategic plan goals is to really look at that achievement gap and trying to make that gap smaller. And I think some of the data that we saw tonight shows that this model is beneficial and is really impacting a lot of our students in a positive way, which is something that we're proud of and proud to see. Mrs. Gilbert said this at the beginning too. We have this model happening in different spots throughout our building. So push-in is happening all over the building, not just in fourth grade. But we're looking to continue to expand that where appropriate. So typically in January, we'll start to look like, as Mrs. Heavey said, at our placement process to start thinking about what students might benefit for this model, and really kind of use data to inform decisions to kind of think about that even as early as January, right, to start really thinking about placements and matches. But I am we're proud of our staff for truly embracing the model. As Mrs. Heavey said, the benefits really do outweigh the barriers. I'd also like to speak to the sense of belonging in this classroom community. I know they touched on this a bit. It's great for teachers to have, someone to bounce ideas off of. It's great for kids. And kids have another adult in the building that they feel like they can trust. And are there to support them, whether or not they're on Mrs. Heavey's caseload or not. When you walk in the room, you get that general feeling that it's all one big community, and that's a testament to their work. So while we're excited for the remainder of the year to watch the growth, we look forward to seeing that the data that this group will show. But yeah.
Anyone have any questions? Sue?
First of all, I applaud you for doing this. So I worked in the Chelmsford schools as both a special educator and a general educator. I've tried this model, nowhere near as successfully as you've done it, but I really applaud you. It takes an incredible amount of collaboration and work to do it. I do have one question though about, maybe you do this through careful placement. I saw that growth for those kids who were in first grade and they ended up the year maybe a little behind, but on grade level. How do you deal with the lessons, math in particular, for kids who are really at least a year behind or something? You're trying to teach them a fourth grade level lesson, but they're really third graders or really second graders. How do you work that into the lessons?
So I will say for those particular students, coming in, that was iReady data. So it's very hard to see, is this really where they are? Because sometimes for those two particular students, I can't read the test to them. I can't explain things. I can't give them the accommodations they require on that diagnostic test. But so I had them in third grade and they were doing great third grade. I was teaching them third grade curriculum. So they were able to do the grade level curriculum. So I saw that. They knew their multiplication facts, and I was like, okay, let's try them in the classroom with myself. So while it says grade 1 on the data, they were able to do actual grade level work. I will say, to your point, if this type of model doesn't work for everybody.
Okay.
So if there's
The gap's too wide.
yeah, there are in fourth grade, there's our room that it's all push-in, but then there's another classroom that has kids that are being pulled out because they are too far below and they can't do that grade level work.
Good work, though. I think that's really impressive, this is what you're doing, yeah, with good results.
Also really excited to hear about how this is going and that the two of you have worked well together on it. 2 questions. One is just curiously, are the teachers like you two teachers who volunteer for this opportunity? Is this something that rotates to different teachers? Is it voluntold?
I would say it's collaborative.
Yeah.
Like, we start thinking about it, you know.
A couple of years ago.
Allison collaborates with other special educators, like who's coming up?
Mhm.
Who might work with this model?
Right.
And we have, so Amanda is our 2nd, 4th grade teacher who now has done this model, but our goal is to have all 4th grade teachers, like, try it, right? And some it probably will work better with, but we want to build capacity around that. And same, not just with Allison, but like, we have a 3rd grade teacher who does some push-in, and that's been expanding as well too. So, there's gonna be pockets that this really works well, but we don't wanna just be like, oh, that's working well, we're just gonna that's where it's gonna stay. Like, give it a try, and you two and Jackie Duncan are like good resources too, right? So, when they were working on it together, and I applaud them because Amanda, you didn't know Amanda.
No, we didn't know
They
each other.
didn't know each other at the beginning of the year,
Right.
so that was huge, right? You weren't sure.
Yep.
And Allison, quite frankly, I have
That's
to,
all
I
right,
have
that's
to
okay.
out you.
Throw me under the bus.
So, like 2-3 years ago now, and we're like, listen, what do you think? We want to try this. Look, there's these students. This is probably going to work for. She's like, I just don't think that's going to work.
I've been here for 10 years. That's not how I do my job.
Why don't you just think about it and like we'll talk. And now she's like our biggest spokesperson.
I'm
for
like,
this, so,
love it.
yeah,
And I
so-
do, speaking to what Jason said about being a part of this classroom community, is I am part of that classroom. So I just love the fact that every kid in that room like sees me not as a special educator, not as a special helper teacher, but as part of the classroom. And they all say hi to me in the hall, and they all come to me if she's with students and I'm free in the room, should they come to me for help, or they, ask me things. It's great.
So that's awesome. And having done co-teaching as a gen ed teacher before, I know it's definitely tough. So thank you for the extra work you're putting in for that. Separate question is, I guess, maybe more sort of on the school level. So I heard a little bit about how placement happens, but I'm just curious in like some early data, are there students that could benefit from this that aren't getting this opportunity? And is the goal to expand it so that more students are given this opportunity, or there's some sort of focus of putting the students all in the same class who could most benefit from this opportunity, where students who need the pullout are kind of put into other classes? I'm just curious, like in the long term, is the goal to expand this so that everyone who can benefit from it is receiving this opportunity?
I'd say we're close to that, but you want to talk about placement?
Yeah, I would say, obviously, and I think we've kind of mentioned like that this model isn't for everyone, but we are
Right.
trying to expand it. I think looking at that data in January is very key to start seeing like what are some trends, and then starting to really look at student cases and talking to liaisons and talking to general education teachers to see who might benefit from it. So our placement process is quite detailed in the sense of involving quite a bit of people. So getting our special education teachers together, getting our general education teachers together, and really thinking about kids that this would work with and kids that it wouldn't work with is important. So in addition to like obviously our iReady data, our F&P data, all of the data sources that we have, that anecdotal piece of how kids function in a classroom is also key. So the quick short answer would be yes, we're looking to expand this, but we also want to be mindful of like it's not for everyone.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think those conversations and really taking a deep look at that data is really what's been supporting us.
Yeah, so my
Did I
thought
answer?
wasn't so much everyone should get this, it was more, are there kids that you have to say like, these
Yeah.
kids could really benefit from this, we just don't have enough classrooms where it's happening yet?
Yes,
There are probably some, but we watch the data. And I would say like a big part of the process too is starting to have those conversations with parents in January. Hey, so this is what we're seeing, this is the progress. Next year, like, we're thinking about this because they're part of the team and they're part of the decision-making process.
Yeah, no, and there's obviously multiple classrooms in this particular grade that do have special education students in them. So this is one of the several that are. So it's really looking at like that best kind of match for the model.
Can I have
Maria?
a comment?
Yeah.
First of all, this is wonderful because I've been following the strategic plan from the very beginning, and you are doing what the strategic plan is asking you to do, which is that Allison gets to spend as much time as possible with her students. And in turn, Amanda has the privilege of doing the same thing, which is what we really wanted to try to see work within the system. So the other thing is, I want to really commend you on the collaboration. And what I'm seeing is that it's not only the collaboration between the two teachers, but it's also with administration. This is taking quite a bit of effort to make sure, and your use of the data, which I think a lot of us get worried about, are we just gonna become data points? Or is this gonna be really transferable into what's happening with each student? And wow, it works, and that's really wonderful. I also had a question about parents, and it looks like you are bringing parents into the discussion in making choices going forward. So that's terrific as well. I really commend you on this. I know years ago, there was a co-taught classroom, and it didn't really work well. And I know part of the reason was because of the teachers, their styles, the way they worked together, and so on, was very difficult for them to make it through the year. So I know that this takes quite a bit more. And so kudos to you guys. That's amazing. And it's the kids that are benefiting, which is terrific as well. So thank you.
Just two quick questions. First of all, congratulations, this is a great model. What's the para role during all this? Everything's going on. I know you said the para's involved, but what are they? Good
question.
That was a good question.
Yeah.
I would, so in, for reading, so she kind of has a different role, like, in each subject area. And actually, I'm also in there for writing, so 30 minutes of writing too. So for reading, we call it the Fluency Club. So there's a group of my kids, my students, that need extra support and practice in decoding and reading. So she does that 3 times a week. She's also like, there's also a student on a behavior plan in our room. So she is also running that. But we are too, like, it's not just her. So she has that. She is, is there anything I'm forgetting?
In math, she helps to facilitate the games, but then she's also able to
walk around
and help students, or provide that like a little extra dose if even after they met with me and Allison, they need just a little bit more work to get that new concept.
Or if a student is just not getting something, she might pull the student for extra practice. For writing, we do small group writing too. So Amanda will like launch a lesson or like a mini lesson, and then we'll like split kids into small writing groups. And I tend to get my students that are on IEPs, and she gets more of the ones that need just a little extra support, but not on IEPs. And then the para is also in there, like, facilitating and making sure, like, the other kids that are sitting at their desks are able to know what they're supposed to be doing and on the right track. So she's utilized to the max.
She gets to wear a lot of hats.
Yes.
Right? And this is just how's the rest of the school year going? Not just everything good? Is there any things that need to work? Just
No.
We're
South
good.
Row is
For
the
any of
best
the
place
answers.
to work at.
Okay.
I might be a little biased, but these two make it.
Yeah.
So.
great. So we don't get to talk to you very often. Just want to
Yeah.
see how it's going.
So it's going great.
Yeah.
And Amanda and I love working together. So.
Yes.
Awesome.
And South Road tends to get these pilot programs and these, innovative ideas and so on. So congratulations
I
to
really
South Row.
appreciate hearing also the pain points too, since that really helps us kind of have a better sense on how it's going. So I appreciate you kind of sharing all sides.
No, just real quick, Terry and Jason, very much obviously appreciate it. It's very informative, and Allison and Amanda. Just want to acknowledge the extra time that you put in, because I know this isn't, easy. It's a lot of extra time you have to carve in, you have to really work together off each other, so it's recognized and appreciated. Great.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
I missed the presentation, however, I absolutely know you nailed it, because so you guys are good. I appreciate all the work you do with kids.
All right, well, thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Could you pass a water bottle now, please?
Sure.
As South Row is transitioning, we're going to switch into our second report of the evening. Christine Clancy, our DPW Director, is with us to just share a little bit of the news on the, thank you again, folks. Share a little bit of the news on the first quarter, work orders with schools and DPW working together. So Christine, welcome back. And we projected your thing for you.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, next time I can probably put some of these in slides. It might be a little better. So
it's not a
just to
big deal.
provide an update. We provided an annual report last year summarizing the total number of work orders broken down by location and also by trades. And so we're moving forward in that same reporting fashion. Also, I'll talk about at the end of my summary also next steps, because we are upgrading to newer software that I think will provide some more analytic data help us plan and prioritize the work orders that we have. So for this first quarter, July 1st, 2024 to October 1st, we completed a total of, there's 431 work orders that were completed or generated in that time frame. Of that total amount of work orders, about 83% have been completed, and we reported, I said, by the 9 locations, including this building. Also, we by trade, so it's broken down by electrical, HVAC, plumbing, carpentry, roofing, painting, whether it be playground or landscape, delivery. There's a lot of deliveries between buildings. Snow, ice, we don't have any of those, thank God, right now. Parking, and then just general maintenance needs. And so just to kind of also provide, and on the second page of this report, the breakdown by school. So in totality, we're at 83% complete, but then you can also look at each of the schools, and you can see the first figure shows it in a table form, and then the second is a chart. So similar to the last year's annual reporting.
Pardon me.
My computer's on.
The most number of work orders generated are in the high school, and then followed by the middle schools, and lastly, the elementary. So the completion rate is relatively similar. I think the lowest being 70% this building, and then there's various reasons as to, it's all based on resource loading, the needs of the town. But I think it just shows that, and actually I looked back at last year's annual report, and we reported the same amount, 83%. So it'd be interesting to see as we track this to see what our completion rate is. And then if we go to by trade, that's I think where it's a little more interesting to kind of dive into where we have. And so general maintenance, because that's such a catch-all, it's so many different requests, so that's usually generates the most number of requests. And then all the way down, so we have delivery, landscaping, roof. A lot of roof has been 100% complete. When you get to some of the trades, as in plumbing, HVAC, electrical, that's where we had the lower percentages. Electrical being the lowest, and this is we do have right now. So HVAC, we do have a lot of needs, 50 needs, but we do have the on-call contract. We do also have in-house staff. For electricians, we do have 2 electricians. There's just so many needs across town, so that is a split. But I will say that we do prioritize the work orders, so anything that's really emergency that I believe those are being addressed. It's just the workload that's in front of us. Also, I think in terms of the reporting, the total number of work orders are 431. That's a pretty large number, but I feel like that, the summertime is when we're getting a lot of work done preparing for the school year. And we'll continue to monitor quarterly and report quarterly. As we look ahead, we are upgrading our software. So the software that we have, as functional it is, I think there's a lot of opportunities in the new software that we're upgrading to. So Brightly Solutions provides a new software. We are in the transitioning phase, or really basically building out the framework of that program. I'm just getting dates now, potentially January, we would do some training, and then we would set a date or timeline to basically start it. Potentially could be in the spring. It will take time to kind of capture some of that data to provide the analytics, but it has a lot more capabilities in terms of preventive maintenance planning. You can also estimate and put in labor hours, track. We want to eventually track it, maybe tied to assets, so we can track how many hours are spent on a piece of equipment. That's down the line, but I think we're using this program as we currently have it, but there's a lot of more opportunities in the software that's coming, and with that training. And so that I'm interested to see, the reporting of this year, but I think really looking at next year, there'll be more data that we can report with the new software. And happy to answer any questions.
I have one. What is delivery? What do they do?
So I think that's part of our process when we build the framework for the new system, because sometimes it depends how people put in work orders, and we do try to filter that. But sometimes someone will put it as a general request, but there's so many deliveries between schools. So if equipment is delivered to delivered here and has to be brought to a building, so it's delivery usually. Between buildings, or sometimes it's a delivery is made here, but then they need DPW to help bring it to a certain location, or custodians. So I think there are a lot of requests, but also if you look through the general, there's some of those delivery items too. So we will look at that just to see if there's more of a different way to track it for future. But it is used. If you look, it's really just delivery of various. It could be equipment, it could be helping unpacking, it's related to something being received or something being shipped out or between buildings.
This just for Maria, this is the time of year also where like a lot of performances are coming up at the schools. So we need to actually just move equipment, like staging and things like that between buildings. So we might actually just put in the system like a ticket, like we're gonna need to have these stages, what do they call them? The risers, thank you.
Yeah.
Like moved from one school to another, different things like that. It's mostly internal. Yeah, just for the scheduling piece of it.
Okay, thank you.
Right, other questions? I have more of a general, now we're getting into cold weather season. Heating systems all up and running. I know we kind of cranking them up about a week ago and everything looks.
Yeah, everything is operational. That was probably by mid-October, everything was operational. And I know we also are bringing on some of our newer boilers just with the new projects, but everything, we're still in some of the punch list closeout phases, but everything is operational.
Great.
Just a quick thanks to Christine and the staff at DPW. We accomplished a lot this summer. The summer's usually a downtime for us. There's like 8 to 10 weeks where we can get a lot of work done. And all the trades work very hard to not only do just the regular repairs and things like that, but we had a lot of capital projects we were managing at all different schools. So very much just appreciate the partnership and the work with DPW. They do excellent work for us and with us. Just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
I'll see you in January with the next report.
We'll be here.
Still hope there's no snow.
A few more snow and ice ones on there.
Right.
Potentially.
Just another note, you crushed town meeting again, as always. You
Oh,
killed
thank
it.
you.
That's a hard crowd over there.
Sure is.
Positive.
I'm a positive person.
Positive information.
Thanks, Christine.
The truth is,
Just hanging out with you guys. I love coming in.
Have that effect.
All right, third item on the agenda this evening is our school improvement plans for the year. Excuse me, Linda will just review some highlights for us.
So in your packets, you have a copy of all the school improvement plans. This is the yearly plan that is required by each school, according to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. The schools work collaboratively with their school council. So this year, I actually included in who's on each of the school councils, because the school councils should be, as close as possible, a balance between teachers, administration, and parents, and then they usually have a community member at large or community liaison, they all call them something different. And then they put together what those goals going to look like and what will those action steps look like. So each of the schools got together with their school improvement councils, and they were able to put together their goals and their action steps, and they're in the packet for your review. What you'll notice is the elementaries work together, and same with the middle schools to a certain extent, given their new configuration, but you'll see a lot of the same goals reiterated in each of the schools, because that's what they do, is they work closely together. And then you'll see the differences in their data, right, as to how much of a percentage they're looking to increase. Same with the middle schools, and then the high school obviously is its own working building, and then they usually have a lot of other parameters around it, including their NEASC work that they're doing.
I was gonna ask, like, how do they come up with the numbers? Like, some schools 100%, others 105, 110, 150, like.
Right, so they'll look at the different, so a lot of the schools you saw with the iReady data,
Yeah.
so they were looking at, so the difference between growth scores in iReady compared to what you're probably used to when you see for MCAS, we always say they have to be 50% or higher. With iReady, because it's not just an assessment for Massachusetts, it's nationwide, they go by 100. So what you'll see is some schools need to reach a higher growth than other schools based on how the students performed on their iReady data.
That was gonna be my
Yeah.
question too, because I
Right,
was like, they have the same goals, but the numbers are varied. Where
Right,
is
so
that?
some of them want to see more of that stretch growth, some of them just need to have the typical growth, so they look at their individual schools, how their students performed at their school.
So how often do these councils meet, and how do they update this information?
I mean, in a perfect world, they meet more regularly, but I would say they meet anywhere up to 3 times a year. So right now, their big goal of working at the beginning of the school year is to look at last year's data and then try to come up with this year's goals, and then see how the progress is going for their status updates.
Having been on 2 different school site councils before being on school committee, I can say we met monthly in both of those schools that I was part of the school council.
Yeah, when I was on it at Center School, we only met maybe 4 times a year.
It depends on the school and how they're run. There's no requirement for how many times you have to meet, but my sense is the South Row is probably meeting once a month.
Center was when I was there
Center,
too.
yep, yep.
I was on that one for a little while, but this was
changed.
probably.
That's good.
The makeup of when, it's because it's putting people's schedules together, but really they have to look and see how they're progressing with their goals once the goals are in place.
I noticed one of the things in McCarthy is to look at the schedule and redo.
Well-
What are they trying to do, and
They
how are
still
they gonna
just
do
want
it?
to get, well, they still want to just get some more feedback, because they did make some adjustments
Yeah.
for this year based on last year's feedback.
Right.
So originally, teams were running concurrently, and then students were cross-teamed, and they found that difficult because counselors were having difficulty getting to all the students. So then the teachers really wanted to go back to, even though that the 2 sets of teams were running concurrently, they still wanted to be a 4-person team. And that made it more accessible for the counselors, so they're running that this year, but there could be some issues with that. Like, one of the things that we've already found is that all 4 teachers at a grade level can't meet together, right? So, yeah, and you might have to just pick and choose what you're doing. So you don't just, similar with like professional development, you don't just be like, okay, we surveyed you once, we made a change, this is it for the rest of your life. You have to kind of do multiple iterations, so they want to just make sure that they're receiving as much feedback as possible and doing the best that they can with the amount of time that they're allotted.
Great. Any other questions on any of the school improvement plans? Okay, well, thank you.
I appreciate the chance to see them though.
Yeah, that was great. All right.
All right. Fourth up this evening, we're going to stick with Linda, who's going to provide a little overview of the curriculum adoption process. As we talked about previously, specifically, kind of using the literacy as a framework, but just to kind of ground us in exactly what goes into the curriculum adoption process, what some of the timelines are. Linda's put a presentation together on that.
So slide 1 is done. Thank you, Dr. Lang. So yes, I'm going to walk you through the adoption process, no matter what the content area is, and then I just wanted to take a closer look at the larger literacy adoption as we go through this. So there are 5 stages to the curriculum adoption process that I'm going to be reviewing this evening. This is our process that we use in Chelmsford and have used even when I was a teacher in Chelmsford and also as a school administrator. So one of the things you'll find is whenever we start a curriculum adoption process, we have to conduct some type of a needs assessment, right? Like, why are we adopting curriculum? Why are we even thinking of looking at different curriculum? So quite honestly, it's always based on a need, right? So you wouldn't just say, today, we just want to get new curriculum because we feel like it. You would have to have some type of a need, but it has to be driven based on the student body that you're currently teaching. Any changes in your standards, right? So we've known that we've had multiple iterations of our learning standards, especially in math and ELA, since the larger launch of them when the MCAS originally first came out. And then we also are looking at like different pedagogy that we might have for our students, and then looking at some of the gaps. Typically, it's driven in Chelmsford, I can speak for Chelmsford specifically, like the antiquation of our current curriculum products. So for example, the product may not be supported by the publisher anymore, especially like your online digital tools. They may not be producing the books anymore, right? So we ran into that, especially with literacy, that if you needed to replace something, they no longer provided that for you, so you're looking on Amazon for a couple extra copies. So really, you have to make sure that your product just doesn't become antiquated, because that's when pedagogy and different curriculum starts to kind of splinter in the schools in general. People start kind of putting their own curriculum together. So the process starts obviously at the administrative level. So typically we review all the available products that are out there, and then we invite the vendors in to present their products. So we usually start with the larger vendors, right? The big ones that a lot of people know about. And then we bring in, like, for example, for ELA, we had Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. They're one of the big ones that come in. Cengage, which is, they've assumed National Geographic, because that was another big one. Heinemann, Wilson, and then most recently, the adoption in math. They had presentations by McGraw-Hill, Houghton Mifflin, and Illustrative Math. They look at, we all look at the other products, but then at some point, you have to have a few of the 3 to 4 of these vendors come in and actually present to you to see if you'd like to move forward with some type of a pilot process. So the review focuses on the connection with our standards, our assessment options, or connection to current assessments that we have, and both make sure there's differentiation and access points for students to learn. So, in part of our civil rights review, we assess the program for items to make sure, listed to make sure that there's no signs of bias within the product. It's a long process to do. It's something that we're actually reviewed with DESE. So it has those different components that I have up there of invisibility, of stereotyping, selectivity, and reality, fragmentation, linguistic bias, and cosmetic bias. So we want to make sure that they're not just for example, in unreality, they usually say have missing facts or ignoring facts, especially unpleasant facts, right? You want to make sure that on the front, the cosmetic piece, you're like, oh, wow, look at this great, female scientist, but then there's no mention of a female scientist within inside the book. You see nothing past that. Because some of these things are very flashy when you first get them. You're like, wow, bing, bang, boom, beautiful colors. And then you're like, well, where's the meat of all of it? So that is like one of the biggest parts of the review process. Then what you do is we move forward with piloting a few of the curriculums that we have decided to invite in, and they'll send us their products. So what we typically do is we set together a committee, right? And that committee is representation from all the schools, the levels, special educators, because this is a commitment for teachers, not only to teach the products that they're going to have, but also to have the meetings before school, after school, filling out surveys. So they do receive professional development points for it, but they really want to be part of the process and help make a decision for the district. So for ELA, we had 26 teachers when we did the Fontes Vanel classroom. And then for math, I believe they had, I have it up there, the 21 teachers plus the administrators that are part of that whole process as well. And then when you have a product, it is ideal if you can visit schools that are currently using the product. So for ELA, even in the middle of, like right before COVID hit, we were able to get to 2 school districts. One was out in Templeton and the other one was Concord Public Schools. And then what you want to do is bring the teachers together. So whoever's piloting one program compared to the other, you put them together by grade level, by school, so they can kind of talk about the pieces and components of their product. Well, ours is doing this. This is what I see in ours. Because even though they have their own product that they're piloting, they really should be talking to each other to find out what's working, what isn't working in the product, what they see. So we made sure that we put together the committees by grade level and by school, beyond just working on, just putting all the people together that was using one product compared to another one. And then what we have to do is start with the initial feedback from the teachers and the administrators, what they're seeing with the products when they first start off with it. So these are just like little snippet pictures of some of the work that was done for both ELA and math. Then what, eventually, when this is all said and done, you do your final surveys. You are doing classroom observations to see how it's working in the classroom, talking to teachers in real time, review the strengths and weaknesses, and then you'll make any adjustments based on the feedback. And when all goes well, you look at all that data. From your surveys, you look at the alignment to your current district goals. You really bring the numbers to the superintendent, and he loves that part of the process, right? See how much this is going to cost, especially when you're doing an elementary curriculum adoption, gets very expensive. And then once you make that final decision, you coordinate your communication with all the teachers to let them know what's happening and start your ordering. So that's sort of the overview of like what happens with all curriculum products. And then one of the most important pieces here is to make sure that you have a multi-year professional development plan, because you can't just drop these things at the doorsteps of teachers and hope that they can, figure it out. And it shouldn't just be a one and done. So usually the PD always starts with the vendor, and then you branch out from, well, at least I know I will make sure that I branch out from there, whether you continue with the vendor because it's working out well, or you have in-house personnel, or you use some type of other outside vendor that will help the teachers for a multi-year process. And then in your packets, and you'd have to click on the link because it's a pretty large document. This is just a link to all of our curriculum materials for all your content areas by level. So if you're curious what's happening at the high school, and this is the main products, not the smaller pieces. It's like, what are your main products? Are we using Houghton Mifflin? Are we using Heinemann? Are we using Pearson? And then it also lists the digital tools that the district adheres to, so that you can peruse on your own. Okay, so did I miss a? I don't know, I didn't miss, sorry. And then this is the timeline that I keep. So I need to know who's up next for curriculum adoption, because that's like the big one. So you see that science is on there, and it's on there for the K through 6, because the last time they had an adoption was back in 2016. Those were the FOSS kits that we have. So they are up for the next curriculum adoption piece. History and social sciences is up there. They are transitioning for their 5 through 8 teachers into that investigating history. It's kind of a little bit of a slow rollout. We're going to have to see if that's really the full direction they're going to go in. My only hesitation around that, it's very good. I actually have an account with Desi. Desi put this together. It's a very good program. My only hesitation always is if we don't own something, and what happens if it goes away, then what do we do? There's no chance of it going away that I hear, but that's just going to be a constant angst for me. And then right now, the 9 through 12, although they're up late for an adoption piece, they want to keep their current product. They use a lot of the Pearson products, so they may or may not be up for it. So your big one coming up is Science K through 6. They're due. They're the next group. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the literacy program. I know there's a lot of talk out there about in the media, whether it's social media, whether it's on TV, some of the correspondences that you receive regarding literacy and the products that are out there. So before we start with any specifics surrounding our literacy adoption in the district, I just wanted to take some time to briefly touch upon like reading instruction in general. That's a lot of the stuff that you're hearing out in social media and media in generally, specifically the science of reading. So there's been a lot of discussion around this topic. It's simple terms, it's the science of reading is rooted in neuroscience, right? How does our brain learn to read? What are the steps that go along with this? And the key component starts with phonemic awareness and phonics, and then moves all the way through fluency, vocabulary, up to comprehension, which I fully agree with. You need to have those pieces in place. And then what you need to have, though, is evidence-based curriculum. So I think things started to go a little, sideways for most states when there was not that explicit instruction in phonemic awareness and phonics. It has to be explicitly taught to students, which I fully agree with. And then you have to then have regular practice with fluency. You heard a little bit tonight of South Row, some of the ways that they're bringing kids through different stations to be able to practice that as they get into the upper grades. And it's important because if they do not have those foundational skills, they are not going to be able to progress through the rest of the skills needed to become strong readers, and they have to practice reading a lot. So it is very important that you have those foundational skills in place for students for them to be successful once they progress through the grades. So this is just, I'm going over, like I said, the kind of like simpler piece of it. There's a lot more to the science of reading. So then there's what we're finding in Massachusetts and probably what you've heard, Ed Reports and Curate. Ed Reports has been around for a long time. So as of today, there's about 70 educators. So Ed Reports in general, there's 70 educators nationwide that review series of programs, whether it's reading, math, science, they have that, they rate them. And they usually use them, they meet together with groups of people, other reviewers, and they use their rubrics, and then they decide if the product is meeting, or exceeding or not meeting the guidelines that they have on their rubrics. Curate is similar, but they're Massachusetts-based educators that are reviewing products that have been reviewed by an outside group such as Ed Reports, and they're doing a similar process where they have rubrics. They go over the different curriculum products. They use the reviews usually do up to maybe I think 3 series is what I've learned so far. They receive like a small stipend, and then they go through the rubrics to try and find evidences of your standards alignment, accessibility, and pieces like that. And then what ends up happening is they rate these curriculums based on how well that they did, right? So one of the big things out there, especially with FPC, and I wanted to just highlight that in particular, is that it did not meet the Ed Reports ratings. One of the big things there, and one of the things we were actually fortunate enough is the authors behind Fontes Pinnell Classroom are actually Leslie from Leslie University, and we have access to them a little bit more than maybe other people in other parts of the country. But one of the big things is they never made it past, there's 4 gateways for Ed Reports. They never made it past gateway 1 and 2, because I would agree with this, and we did as a district agree with this. They don't have, it's not a strong phonemic awareness phonics background. So what happens in Ed Reports is that if you don't meet gateways 1 and 2, they don't move forward. They stop looking at the product. They don't look at it. They don't review it. And it's good and bad in one way, like good because you don't want to have a product that's not meeting something, but it's bad because the rest of the program really never gets looked at. So if you take a district like Chelmsford puts to, we realized that it wasn't strong in their phonics background, so we went with foundations instead. But then there's so many other good components to the product that it's never going to make it past that gateway. And then with Curate, if it hasn't been reviewed by Ed Reports, and if the publisher is not submitting it, it doesn't get reviewed at all. So that is the reason why Fontes and Pinnell did not make it through those gateways. So that's part of the issues that are out there, some of the things that you may be hearing from people as to why it's not a high-quality instructional material. There's more to it, but it just hasn't been reviewed. Ed Reports, once they've given you a rating, they don't take it back again for a second look, which I thought was interesting. So there's no redos. It's a one and done. Well, it's probably because they don't have a lot of raters, so I'm sure there's a lot of products out there, but that's just my assumption.
And do they talk to teachers that are using these products, or are they just looking at it from rubrics?
They look at it from the rubric setting only. So
They don't know what's going on in the.
yeah, they don't bring it into the classroom. And so when in our pilot program, like I was talking about, teachers are actually using it in front of students. We have real live students that are happening. With Ed Reports, the reviewers are working with other reviewers. They go through some training on how to come to consensus building. They meet weekly. And then using the rubrics, they decide if it's met their rubrics. I don't have a copy of their rubrics. I didn't go that deep into it. So that is a little problematic because they're just looking at the product, not using it with kids. And to me, that's probably like a very big missing link in general, whether your product has met the standards or not met the standards. I would need to see what it looks like in the classroom, and I would want to hear what the educators in our district are saying about the product for the students that they actually are teaching in front of them, because I'm assuming it might be different if it's used maybe in an urban setting or a small school district, a rural school district. There's got to be a lot of nuances that go along. So I'd rather hear from our teachers than I would people I don't know. And then there is a publisher's report, response to the Ed Report review from the publishers themselves, talking about some of the issues that they had. I think one of the biggest issues is that they had asked for an extension because some of this stuff was still in publication, but they were denied that piece. And then this has been our literacy adoption timeline. I started with 2011 because that was the big change in the standards for ELA and math, so there was a lot of adoption that was happening. Your elementary school teachers were getting a lot of new curriculum all at once. They were very busy. Susan probably could attest to that. Prior to that, though, we had the Scholastic program in grades K through 5, Pearson in grade 6, and HMH in grades 7 and 8. So this is our whole timeline and where it brings us up to where we are right now for literacy. I did highlight the FPC in grades 5 and 6 because I know you've received some feedback regarding that. So a couple of things about curriculum products. They typically run K through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12. That's how the publishers put together their products. So grade 5 was always receiving FPC because they received Journeys. Back in the day, we just have to adjust it based on the timing that they have for literacy instruction in grade 5 compared to an elementary school teacher, grade K through 4, because elementary teachers typically have about 90 minutes, where your middle school teachers, grades 5 and 6, would only typically have 60 minutes. Now they're up to 70 minutes, which is great. Not as much as elementary school, but it's still great. And then for grade 6, rather than pull in all the different products, we wanted to, for continuity, to ask some of the teachers to take a look at it to see if it would work to keep the continuity, or decide if we should then bring in more products if it wasn't going to work at all. So I don't have any correspondences to the contrary that it wasn't going to work. What I didn't do, and I probably wouldn't, I'd make sure that I make a note of this moving forward. Our K through 4 teachers went through some extensive surveys that they had to fill out prior, when we were doing the adoption process. Because I only had a small group for grades 5 and 6, I didn't have them fill out those surveys, and in hindsight, I probably should have had them fill that out. It was more conversational that was happening in their, department time, one-on-one with me. We were in the middle of COVID too, which was interesting because some of the conversations were online, like video. So in hindsight, I would recommend for myself or anybody out there that everyone fills out their surveys, because it has all those counter pieces to it. So I spoke about it earlier. One of the biggest things you have to do is professional development. I don't care how great a product is, if it does, and how beautiful it is. If you don't provide professional development for the teachers, it is going to be very difficult for them, especially the ones that weren't the pilot teachers, because it is brand new for them. So one of the things we did is we sat with Heinemann, and we had some really good instructors at the time, and we mapped out year 1 first. So this is just a snapshot of what year 1 looked like for the Fontes and Pinnell classroom, K through 4. I will say one of the benefits of COVID, if that's something we can say, having additional time with the online piece for professional development was amazing. I don't know if we would have been able to pull it off as well if we didn't have the time to provide it online, and then additional time that teachers were not in front of students. So it was a plus, if we have to find pluses for COVID. And then for K through 2 teachers, we rolled out foundations K through 2 first, because it would have been too much of a heavy, even pulling in grade 2 was a heavy lift for us, but we just really wanted to make sure that those kids were not being left behind. So year 1, we did the professional development for grades K through 2 for foundations, and this is, again, a snapshot of their plan. And then grade 5 and 6 in 21, 22, this was their first year rollout of their plan. So what they were getting for professional development when they were having it, what the topics were. And again, we started off with our group, and then we worked with Leslie University, which I'll talk about moving forward. So then 1 year is great, but I'll be honest with you, it's not enough. You have to do multi-years. So continuing with FPC and foundations, we continued with Leslie University for foundations, and then we had Wilson come in to do additional PD in year 2 for them. And then grade 3 was brought into the fold in that second year. It was their first year with foundations. Most school districts stop at grade 2, but we really thought it was important to continue to grade 3, and especially if we had missed any of the students. We wanted to make sure that they had that continuing piece, and we still stay K through 3 with foundations. Did this not move forward? Come on, there we go. And then K through 4 in year 3, we took it in-house, and our department coordinator for literacy, Kelly Rogers, put together after-school sessions for teachers to take a deeper dive, especially into the writing mini lessons, because the book was still in publication, and those publication books started to roll out as we went through that. So those were just the dates that she did those during that school year. And then for grade 5 and 6, we started obviously in the summer for a group of teachers to do summer work that we paid them for to start to organize the F&P materials. That included the teachers that had it as originally, the 2 teachers in grades 5 and 6 that had the products to organize the material and just create an initial pacing guide, because it was going to look different in grades 5 and 6 than in a K through 4, given the amount of time that they have to teach literacy. And then we continued throughout that school year with Leslie University we had one instructor, and this was the same for elementary too, but we had one instructor that worked primarily with grade 5, and the other one with grade 6. They were a middle school person, where at the elementary level, we had someone that was more of an elementary school person. And at elementary level, we break them up K through 2, 3 through 4, and then 5 and 6 went together with the secondary instructor from Leslie University. And then FPC released their review of the 180-day plan for teachers, if they wanted to use that as their process to go through how to teach the program, because there's a couple of different ways you can pace that. And then you just live your pacing guide for a year, and you make adjustments as you go along, because everything looks good on a piece of paper when you put it down at first. Then you go and do it, and you're like, oh, we can't do this, and you make those adjustments. And then their continued piece, we had to take a look at, this is when we were in the process of doing the reconfiguration of the 2 schools. So now they were going from a 60-minute to a 70/75-minute, give or take a transition time. And then grade 5 was now incorporating their mini lessons. Grade 5 teachers had an amazing idea, because one of the things I know that was like one of the concerns the teachers had is they wanted kids to have a copy of every book basically in their hands, and that's not how the program works. So what they did is they identified the books that they were using to do their writing, more of their writing piece, and we bought the additional copies. I'm like, that's brilliant. This is the best idea I've ever heard in my life. So that was a really good idea. Now we're bringing that forward with grade 6. For this year, if there are certain books that they know that I get the difference between seeing something online and having it in your hands, just as having a literacy background. If they identify these books that they really want that physical copy for every student, then let's identify them and let's purchase them. So that's where grade 6 is that at this point. And then for standards alignments, I know that there was some concerns, is this, aligned to the standards? They do have, we looked at the first alignment document that they had as part of the initial review, and then there are grade level standards and alignment for Massachusetts specific standards, not just the Common Core ones. And those are all hyperlinks for you. There's a lot of pages. I wasn't going to print them out for you, but that is what you would see if you want to look at your specific standard alignments and which stories and different standards went with each different part of the components of the program. I know there's been talks around the literacy grants in general. So the first 2 grants that came out were the Accelerated Learning Literacy Grants. They were offered in 22 and 23. They were offered after we actually purchased our curriculum, but that's fine. However, the first one in 2022, we wouldn't have qualified for, just based on numbers alone. That was for districts that had under 2,000 students. But for both of these grants, priority is given for underperforming status at the school district, and that is not the Chelmsford Public Schools. So when you get into competitive grants, if you're not meeting those criteria, you're not going to receive them. And then they don't support a pilot process. You have to pick one of the ed reports / if Curate had already reviewed it, you had to pick one of those programs. That's what a lot of districts did. They picked one of the programs that was available that had met the standards in ed reports and/or Curate. And then the Partnership for Reading Success, that is the current grant for 2025. So interestingly enough, districts, I guess, this is what I'm assuming happened, they purchased through the literacy grant, and you would only receive up to $200,000, by the way, for one of these grants. They purchased it, but they didn't, I guess, have professional development behind it, which is very foreign to me. So this first PRISM grant that's out there right now, we wouldn't qualify for it because we don't have one of those programs. We also are not, again, an underperforming status district. And we have more than 1,000 students, but we also provide the professional development. So it's a little bit backwards, but I'm happy that teachers are getting the professional development they need for whatever product they have. So we don't qualify for the literacy grants in the past or the current one right now. We'll have to see moving forward if they offer something else in our curriculum adoption process. And then just our continuation, so we're going to refine those pacing guides because that always happens. We do that with our benchmark assessments, we do that with our report cards, just in general, that iteration, that's typically summer work when teachers have time. We can put groups of people together, they can make in a little additional money. We have to incorporate the writing lessons from the mini lesson books, especially for grade 6, and then give them some additional PD based on what they need. With that definite focus on writing. And we also have, in our digital tools, especially like iReady, there is the toolbox, and in that toolbox, for every standard, there's about 5 lessons. So if you have to do in addition to, or intervention for, so if a student doesn't get it with the regular lesson and they need more practice, iReady has all the lessons already built in for them by standards that teachers could pull. Same with Nearpod, that's new for us this year. There are lessons in there that are vetted out. They're more in like a slide presentation. So if you need to do more or need additional ways to do things, they have them digitally, they have them that you can print them out. It depends on what the teacher decides that they want to do. They can use one of the digital tools that we have available for them. Now I'm open for the 5,000 questions.
It's a lot. Anybody have questions? Susan?
First, I want to address the Fountas and Pinnell issue in 2 ways. One, we know that Fountas and Pinnell doesn't provide explicit instruction in phonics and phonemic awareness, but I know, I'm very familiar with their pedagogy and their methods. A lot of people have spread this rumor that Fountas and Pinnell tells kids to just guess, and that's absolutely not true. Looking at the words and the structure of a word is very much part of the instructions and the lessons in Fountas and Pinnell. So you're looking at the letters that you see and making sure that your reading matches the letters you see in the sounds. But it doesn't have explicit instruction in phonics, so that I'm really glad that we've included Foundations, because Foundations does that. So those 2 paired together can really work. One thing I'm questioning, though, is we've heard from the teachers who were here last spring and teachers I've talked to at the early grade levels, they really want to see decodable readers, that kids who are getting those Foundations level can have decodable readers that they can read independently. I'm not saying to throw Fountas and Pinnell out in any way, but might the process be to review whether purchasing those decodable readers for these early grade level classrooms, and might that be something that you're considering, a needs assessment about that? And
So we do have the decodable readers, but they're for the reading specialists. So when the students are not getting it in the general ed classroom, the reading specialists are working with the students, so we do have the decodables at that level. The teachers also have access to reading A through Z, and they're all decodables. So
Okay.
that is one of our digital programs, so if somebody really, truly needed it there. So, because that's a lot of books, and it's also expensive, and what are you actually doing with them? So the decodables are with the reading specialists, and they're the Foundations ones.
Okay, wasn't aware of the reading A to Z. But I do feel like everyone, not just the kids who need reading intervention, everyone needs books to practice those skills on, and not just during an isolated foundations level, but actually to have books to read. So I think making sure that everyone knows that there's, even if it's through reading A to Z, the kids have access to practice those decoding skills and independent reading. So I think that's an important thing to just keep focused on. I'm not against looking into getting even more, like, I got a great sample of something at the conference we were at, of some, I forget the name of the program, but they were specifically decodable readers going through the grade levels. But it's just something to consider, because I know teachers are asking for those. My other interest, and I see that your 2024, 25 and beyond, that focus on writing, because that's another thing I've heard, that the Fountas and Pinnell writing program is weak. And I saw that last year, you hosted optional after-school sessions for teachers to take a deeper dive into the writing. I would really hope that that becomes mandatory for everyone. I think that I'm hearing a lot that there's not a lot of writing, but if now we're starting to get into that and learning what the materials are and what the lessons are, that everyone would be offered that.
There's a science of writing too.
And
There's a science of everything.
But yeah, I just think it has to be more than just those people who chose to delve into it after school. It has to be something that everyone now receive, that we've got the materials now.
They did have initial professional development. If you look at the snapshots, they focused in on.
Yeah, and I saw that you added that that's a focus for
And
this
ask
school
them,
year.
yeah, and here's the thing, the writing is gonna take a whole different turn with AI, but I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole today. But the reading was like the priority to make sure that our students could actually be fluent and strong readers.
Yeah, but we've got to now work that writing in, because I think there's been a couple of years of kids in early elementary who weren't getting strong writing lessons because the teachers didn't know how to tie it in. And now that we're learning, I think it's really important that teachers get a lot of support in doing that.
Sorry, did you go?
Another question.
Oh, okay. So I appreciate getting a deep look at this, which is great. One thing that I keep thinking about, well, two things. One is I keep thinking about the fact that there's some nascent research, and I'm not speaking specifically to Chelmsford, showing that students who are exposed to a more structured literacy program, like say Foundations, and one like Fountas and Pinnell that uses the 3 cueing method pretty integrally, can be confusing for students because they're learning strategies on one hand that are sort of science of reading backed, and on the other hand, they have exposure to a very different approach to figuring out difficult passages and words. And I guess I'm curious, I don't work in the schools, and so I don't see this. I would love to hear if we have any data from our teachers on whether they're noticing those kinds of confusions and gaps arising using 2 different curricula that use 2 different strategies for maybe that point of transition from phonics and phonemic awareness into comprehension. So and really like that syntactical piece. So I am curious, and maybe it's something, it would be data I would love to hear about coming from our teachers. Similarly, I'm also curious about the writing and would love to see, as maybe this kind of piloted new material that's being supplemented, as that gets a little bit more data on how that's working for students, I'd love to see how that is going to. The other concern I have is that, so we use Foundations. I personally have seen great things come from Foundations. My kids, I've seen it as an educator. And that is also not a meets the standards curriculum according to Ed Reports and DESE and most HQIM reviewers. And so if we're using that to supplement the missing piece, I anecdotally feel good about that curriculum, but I just wanted to name that is also not right now considered as full. It's a partially meets as fully meeting the expectations of HQIM as a supplemental resource. So looking at it only as a supplemental resource even isn't fully meeting the needs around phonemic awareness specifically. And I know we do have other
We have
curricula.
Haggerty,
Yeah,
yeah, we have
Haggerty.
Haggerty. I didn't get that,
Yeah.
like, I figured 29 slides was enough for
Yeah.
tonight. But we do have, that's for your K1 if we needed it in grade 2, if, students need that. We have Haggerty, and that's the phonemic awareness. So I just didn't get that deep into that. But, you're right, they have to have that, that's the main part. They have to have that phonemic awareness, because we used to have lively letters. And Haggerty is much more structured at this point.
Yeah, and I guess my point is like, I'm wondering if it, and I know it's not arising for a year or two, but thinking ahead to when we might take a close look at our existing curricula, I would love to explore, I know there are some very well-reviewed curricula that are being used in a variety of districts that cover all of those bases in one program. And I'm curious, I guess before then, it would be great to get data from teachers on how problematic it is to have 3 separate curricula, one addressing phonemic awareness, one focusing on those foundational skills, and then one moving into reading and then potentially supplementing for writing. It just starts to make me wonder if there is a lack of coherence in that process that might emerge as we look at data over time and hear what teachers in Chelmsford say. And I'm not expecting you to have the answers now, but it is something I'd love to hear about as in the years ahead as we move closer to the point of hearing, you all's process for looking at what's next.
So just a couple of things, you're right, yeah, I wouldn't have I haven't heard anyone say that there's like confusion, I'm sure there is confusion, but that's not been prevalent, and we would certainly have to get that from the teachers. Just to be clear on a couple of things, there's a whole writing component for Fontes Pinnell that's connected to every piece of reading that they have. K through 3 had their books right out of the gate, grade 4 got them a year later, grade 5, and now here's grade 6. So the K through 3 had everything, and when we worked with our consultants, we made sure that there was a way to incorporate through the literacy continuum. There's a whole section on writing for reading and writing lessons in general, so we just used that as an overlay. So they weren't without the lessons, they just needed to really get their head around the reading part. So they did have the majority of the program in front of them. I would agree. So what's funny is all these reviews too, and I don't know how deep anyone's got into ed reports, maybe beyond Diana and I, because this is what we do. But none of the curriculum that's considered high quality instructional materials has been connected to like how the students, like their actual data, right? Because they're so new, right? We don't know if, like, did the curriculum really make a difference? One of the things I've been doing is, especially I've heard some of really good things about some of the products as well. I'm looking at districts that were like early adopters of it. I haven't seen, and all I have is MCAS to go by, and we know MCAS is a little, funky, especially with 1 year off. They've changed the standards, the proficiency rating amounts have changed. I'm not seeing like progression for some of these districts that were early adopters. So that I'm so interested to see in the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years, is it moving the needle on their academics? The only thing I have besides the anecdotal is the data on how our students are doing. And if you recall, when I went over just the preliminary academic data, we don't have lots of students that are unable to have those foundational skills and read. It's the comprehension, it's that fluency, combating the fact that students just don't read as much as they used to than when we went to school. And what they're reading is questionable, but it's fine. But no, it will be interesting as this progresses, and then when we get ready, because we will be doing another adoption, they're up on the list. And I did that based on 8 years, as an 8-year cycle. You can always change it. In a perfect world, you do it every 6 years. Chelmsford typically runs every 10 years because there's a cost associated with it. Plus, it takes a long time to roll something out. Teachers get comfortable, and then you pull it from them. And your elementary school teachers are always in some type of an adoption, right? ELA, then it turns to math. You just heard that I said science, social science. So they're in this, they're hard workers, especially your K through 2 teachers that do have multiple products in front of them.
Yeah, and by no means am I suggesting that we suddenly like contribute to innovation fatigue and like have the teachers suddenly do something next year. But I am thinking just, so you raise an interesting point around looking at what other districts have seen in terms of progress. I think it probably is too early to say, aside from the things you named around MCAS and things like that, it's also likely that we wouldn't see the kind of payoff from that adoption until the kindergarten students that started with it hit third grade, so that's already a 4-year delay. But that might line up really nicely with when Chelmsford wants to look closely at it again, and I would love to see us think very carefully about, yes, we don't want to like disrupt everything for the sake of disruption, but I would love to see us look very carefully at picking something that is identified and seen broadly as an HQIM, because those are going to be the products that are going to get maybe not these grants, but grant money, and maybe these are going to be the products where there's going to be an ongoing demand and additional support, and aside from all of that, hopefully it translates into success for our kids, so.
I'm not against, though, having different pieces. I think using Hegarty and Foundations and Fence and Pennell gives teachers the ability to integrate the pieces as they see fit for their class. I have a little bit of a reluctance to pick one publishing company, one perspective that covers the whole broad base of ELA. ELA is huge, and taking all of it from one publisher's perspective could be missing some things that are, so the way we're doing it, those pieces fit together. It's not like Hegarty doesn't work with Foundations and Foundation doesn't work with Foundations and Pennell. They can all work together very well, and teachers should be skilled enough to know how what I've just taught in this lesson dovetails into this piece. I think we don't want to underestimate our teachers' abilities
Well, I
to
was
do
just gonna
that.
say, curriculum doesn't teach students, students teach
Right.
curriculum. You want cohesiveness with your curriculum so that when students are not doing well or doing fantastic, you can have a conversation about something common and it's been vetted out. I get very nervous around things coming in that haven't been vetted out. Is there some bias in there? Is there something inappropriate? Like that's.
Sure, but if
That's a
we're
big
all
one.
using Hegarty,
Especially in
and we're all
ELA.
using
Right,
Foundations.
so then if like your kids are doing fantastic and mine are not, I can go have a conversation with you and say, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing this. It comes down to the pedagogy. So that's really the push for everybody should be, well, first of all, we spend a lot of money on this. We spend a lot of time. There's a lot of people that are putting efforts into it. And we should be using the products that we are adhering to. And I can, with confidence, say, we've purchased this. This is what we're using. You should expect to see it being used. And if it's not working, change it. If it is working, great. And if people can have a conversation with it, and let's make sure that it's been vetted out for all of those pieces that I talked about for bias and for appropriateness for students.
To both your points, I do think it'll be important over the next couple of years, as some of these other products that have just kind of come out in response, more the package deals to the HQIM kind of efforts. What are districts actually seeing when the teachers are implementing them? Like, one of the things Linda and the group does do is go out to the other districts to see it actually being implemented. So I'll be curious to see a couple of years after teachers have it under their belt, how it actually gets implemented. Are they seeing results academically? Because we just don't have that piece yet. And it actually could be quite timely, based on like when we're up for this again. But, I think it doesn't mean, and again, you kind of touched on this, every year you're reevaluating the pacing guides, the resources that you have. Is there something that's missing? Do the teachers come forward and say, those reading books would be really helpful to our writing lessons? We'll purchase that for people. So there's always openness to doing that. It just needs to be cohesive, and everyone kind of on board doing the same thing. And, when teachers have an idea, vet it through your group. Talk with your teachers about, talk with your classrooms about, let's do something district-wide, grade level-wise, not just have one teacher go off on their own and kind of do something, but if it's valuable, bring it to the table, let's put it into the pacing guide and let's all implement it. And I think it's worked well.
Any other questions, comments?
I'm just going to comment that the one thing I've always heard was that the writing component was not sufficient. And I know, I can see it for my own girls, comprehension, writing and comprehension, I believe, go hand in hand tremendously. So, to increase that level of comprehension, I hope that we now have all of the ability to do the writing component of this program. And it sounds like we do.
We do.
We've got the tools, so hopefully that works well. The other thing was, I think when the implementation originally came along, I think some people felt that their personal, what they were seeing, how things were working in their own classroom and in light of their knowledge and their background, wasn't really being well heard. These are the comments I got about the implementation part of things. But yet, you're saying, like, for example, the fifth grade had a brilliant idea about printing out these books, and here they are. That type of thing is really important. I think the thing is to be sure that whenever we're implementing anything, that any idea can come forward and then make a choice about, what ideas should be implemented school-wide, district-wide, at that particular level or every level,
Yep.
just so that people feel that way. And believe me, there are always going to be negative comments. There are always going to be people that, I came in to the picture with my girls when Sue was teaching first grade and getting into all of those standards and all of the, I'm going, what the heck is this? And trying to figure out how to teach to the standards and all that. And it worked pretty well, but that's because not only was there the material and that the tools that were given to Sue and the class, but also her ability to teach and to do it quite well. That worked, and I'm complimenting you, but at the same time, I know that it worked really well, because I went into a class several times and I saw it in action. So we have that too. We have teachers and staff that have been hired and selected so well by our administrators, who are there to give their talent and their abilities. And I think they had felt, some of them, that it was being thrown at them or that their input was not being shared. I think we've learned some of these things too, but it looks like you are listening to some of the ideas, you're implementing some of the ideas, which is great. I think it's just making sure that they all sense that their ideas are being heard and that their skills and their talent and their abilities are appreciated as well when they're implementing whatever the curriculum might be. And we saw two incredible teachers today when they presented.
They were talking about, like, this was the problem.
Absolutely. That was absolutely fabulous. I mean, it's that type of, I wouldn't want their ideas not to be heard. And it looked like, the administrators were listening to what they were saying and taking it into consideration when deciding how the classroom was going to be set up and the whole thing, and which students were going to be there and so on. That was amazing. I think it's the same thing here. It's harder because it's larger, and across many different classes and so on. But I think we have listened, and it looks like some of these things have been implemented, which is good. And the writing was one of the things that was always commented to me.
K through 6, typically, like, their focus is on the reading, right? And then you get your 7 through 12 teachers that writing, and they don't want to teach the reading skills. So we've, like, flip-flopped that, because they your 7 through 12 teachers are like, they should already know how to read, right? And just living that, having taught elementary and middle and high school, I've seen that transition, and it's hard. And the writing is hard because it can be subjective. It's a lot of work to give feedback to students too. So, and there is always that push of, like, but if they can't read, but there is the, like, writing is the playbook to see what did you read, to be able to get your information down for people to give your ideas for. So they do very much go hand in hand. And it doesn't have to be big writing. It can be little writing. And I think that's, like, we've tried to break that mold of, the 5-paragraph essay, everybody thinks they have to write these big, long things. I'm like, no, kids can do quick writes. That's writing. And what's your purpose for writing? So it's always been a little bit of a conundrum over the years. But we'll get people there.
That's great. Writing is very important.
One really last thought I have is just, and related to getting data and seeing what's working, both internally, like hearing from teachers, is the coherence no problem? Is it conflicting info from different curricula? I would love to know that. But also, as I mentioned, I'd love to hear how things are going at other districts, and I notice that very close to home, we have a data source. I saw that Valley Collaborative is implementing one of the new HQIM elementary literacy curricula, EL education. So that's one example of a district that we could, or a school that we could see how that is going and have a basis for comparison in the coming years.
Thank you for a very thorough report, and all I can say is thank God I teach science.
You can do writing in science.
never
any
That's right. Science.
It's not just the ELA.
I do, I write equations and I balance it.
Nope, those Foss notebooks.
Yeah, they could be writing, it's not just the
gonna ask
ELA
one question.
teacher.
Can I ask one question on the instructional materials adoption timeline? One, you gave, this is probably not all of your materials?
No, so
Okay.
if you go back to slide, that's just like the big ones.
The
If
big
you
ones,
go
okay, that's fine.
back,
Because I'm thinking of things like psychology, which changes so
Correct.
so
Oh,
often.
sorry. So right now, this one here, you see that link on slide
Okay, we'll
something?
go there.
Yeah, I can just email to you directly too,
Okay,
I just didn't
that
want
would
you
be
printing
terrific.
out. That,
An email with the 2 links.
yes, that has your elementary, middle, and high school, and then it has technology, it has fine and performing arts, you name it, it's on there.
Because it feels like some of those courses that they're getting at the high school is really like college,
It is.
in the sense that it's changing so fast.
So I'll send you that
So-
link separately,
Yeah. Great.
all the links.
Great.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Next up this evening, item 5, is the renewal of our net school spending agreement with the town. So Joanna and I met with Town Manager Cohen and John Souza and Darlene Lucia, the town accountant, to review the net school spending agreement. And basically, each district in the state has to have a defined way that they report municipal expenditures on, that support schools on what we term as our end-of-the-year report. So we've had a standing report with the town. We can review it, as things change as they go, but we typically approve them over a multi-year period and then sit down formally to re-up the agreement when they expire. So our agreement happens to be expiring after fiscal '24, which Joanna is doing now. So that report is in. So we need to do one out for the next number of years. And when we sat down just to review it, everything really stays the same. Everything is functioning well for us and is accounted for municipal expenditures, except the town does not have a health educator anymore. So I just kind of yellow lined that for you. Where they didn't have one, there's no expenses that they're recording, so it's not like they were getting credit for something that they didn't spend. But there's just no sense in keeping it in the next agreement because they don't have that position any further. So that was the one thing that changed in the agreement. And then obviously in the last paragraph, we're just suggesting this go for a 4-year period, 2025 to 2028. And if there's anything that ever does come up during the course of the year, we certainly can meet to review and make alterations. But we have to have an agreement signed because the agreement is what the external auditors use to audit our end-of-the-year report to make sure that the expenses are being reported accurately. So you have the minor change in front of you in a document, and then I incorporated the changes into kind of the final document. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but ultimately looking for a motion to approve the revised net school spending agreement covering the term of fiscal '25 to fiscal '28 as presented.
Okay, any questions before we make a motion?
I feel like, so this is my first time seeing this. I looked at it earlier today, but I am curious, just to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. This is essentially agreeing with the town on what percentage of certain shared expenses the district pays for versus what the town pays for?
So this is actually expenses that the town pays for directly,
Okay,
that they're just looking to apportion a fair share to the school department.
got it, okay.
So these are all expenses that hit the town budget that don't hit the school department budget. We report every dollar of like our budget on the end of the year report, but then they're also allowed to charge back if you want to, services that they pay for out of their budget to count towards the net school spending amount that in the Chapter 70, you have to have your required net school spending. So some of their, if you want to consider them like non-cash, because the cash comes to us as
Right.
our budget, does get to be recorded. So this is just the way that we're going to record them.
And this, and in what you're saying, just to make sure I'm fully understanding, is that anything that's not highlighted has not changed.
Yeah, correct. The only thing I changed from the previous document was that one highlighted paragraph in yellow with a strike through, the health educator. And then in the very last paragraph, I just changed this to be an agreement that goes from fiscal '25 to '28. Those are the only two things we've changed.
Thank you.
Everything else has been working fine.
Any other questions? I don't think a motion.
Dying to make my
I know,
motion.
you're waiting, jumping.
I move that we approve the net school spending agreement, Massachusetts DESI EOYR, indirect cost allocation for fiscal year 2025 to fiscal year 2028. As presented.
I'll second the motion.
Very nice motion. Good motion. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? 5-0.
Thank you. So after the meeting, if you just hang on for a second, I have a clean copy that we'll just sign and then be able to execute. Sixth item on the agenda tonight is just the personnel report. You'll see it's relatively quiet now that the school year is underway, but these are just a few new hires and a couple of resignations that occurred during the month of October. So I just present that as a report of progress.
Any questions on that? Seems pretty good. Okay. All right, last thing.
Last for us is just Valley Collaborative. So if you recall, I think it was this summer that we received the first kind of report on collaborative business. So we are a member district of Valley Collaborative, and they're required at least every quarter to give us an update on their business practices. We put this on our agenda, ultimately it gets recorded in the minutes, and then they need this for their audit, just to show that they're actually providing that information to us. So happy to answer any questions you have. I do serve as your board rep on the board. Very much enjoy my time working with that. And this is their quarterly report for the first quarter, so we would just look for a motion to accept it as a report of progress.
Okay. I move that we accept the quarterly report on, from the Valley Collaborative for fiscal year 25 first quarter.
Second?
Any questions? Without going through the budget too, they're in good shape as well financially?
Yeah, they're in good shape.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to get our budget for next year at the December meeting, but they're just wrapping up their audit now. We actually have a board meeting on Thursday.
Okay.
But they're looking to have the same return we anticipated, and their enrollment's actually up quite a bit. So their expenses are up, but their enrollment is up, and so the revenue in turn is going to be up. But I know they're having another strong year.
Okay, great.
They do really good work.
Yeah, they do. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of accepting? Aye. Anybody opposed? 5-0.
Quick question that wasn't related to the vote, so I held it. Any chance you got to go when they had Temple Grandin? You there? That would have been fascinating.
That was their orientation day. They had their staff orientation day, and it conflicted with ours. So I didn't get to
That would have
go.
been fascinating.
I know. I heard it
He's
was, she
exceptional.
was an excellent speaker for them.
Yeah.
All right, any liaison reports?
I can talk a little bit. I attended the McCarthy and Parker PTO meeting last Thursday. And what I heard was that the pizza and pumpkins event at Parker went really well. And so far, so good with the museum field trips we all approved for out-of-state travel for. And next month, they're going to be walking over to the high school for music performances, which they're very excited for. And planning a lot of events and activities through the year. At McCarthy, 8th graders had a really positive experience at SNHU for a leadership conference. And the school is partnering with DM Group's Breakaway Group to pilot some extra RTI, or that's what I'm calling it, but extra support for students with different needs in cycles. So it's going to be interesting to hear how that is going. And otherwise, it sounds like things are going well at both schools.
Anybody else?
Center School PTO, oh, I'm sorry, Sue, did you?
That's right, doesn't matter. You can go.
Sure. So Center School PTO, the meeting was on November 13th. And they always have a presentation by the teacher rep and as well as the principal. And I always kind of find that fascinating because the teacher rep takes it on, in this case, it was Mrs. Driscoll, and she took it by level. So, for example, kindergarten went to a field trip at Parley Farm. First grade had a trip to the Discovery Museum in Acton. The third grade had Natasha Lowe visit, and they loved it. It was so good. The library, they started some book clubs. K through 1 are settling into the library routines and showing kindness. This is such amazing stuff because it's truly a collaboration between the PTO and the school. And that is just amazing to see. They had fundraising and events. They had Recycle Day along with McCarthy, and that did quite well again for this one. And they have upcoming their winter gift room. That's December 9th through the 13th. Excuse me, that's my Portuguese coming in. And then, yeah, and Riverhawks Night is on January 24th, and they're starting to gear up for the Taste of Chelmsford.
Susan, you had some?
So you'll know I'm liaison to the town's strategic plan steering committee, and just to let people know, the entire committee and 4 people from Barry Dunn, the consulting group, spent the entire day today working on a mission statement, vision statement, and the strategic areas. You know how our strategic plan has our priority areas. We spent a whole day on deciding what those priority areas are. Education kept coming up, how people in this town really, really value education, but also want to continue to see resources being put toward the constant improvement of education. But it's also is ranked very high in what people think the town is doing well. So there's a lot of discussion and debate on where education fell into the priority areas. It ended up going into just the overall town leadership, because there wanted to be an emphasis on different town groups and departments learning how to be interconnected and working together. So when you get to that part, you'll see education is rather than being its own separate topic, is mixed in with all the important town leadership. But so tomorrow, the actual town staff who head various different departments, who have to put all these things into place, are going to meet, talk about these strategic priority areas, and do the hard work of deciding what the goals and the action steps are going to be to achieve all of these things.
Wow.
So by December, we should have something fleshed out to share with the beginnings of it, to share with the town on what the direction of this is going to be. But a lot of work got accomplished today. And it's been really helpful to hear how everyone feels about the schools and to give some input on that. So it's been an interesting process, and it's continuing to go well.
I'm curious, do you know what the final number was for how many people completed the surveys? I know they were.
So the survey was completed by 200-plus people, but they actually got input from a lot of people through interviews that they did with town employees and people who served on boards and committees in town, and through the 4 different community forums that happened. There were people who were just present, and they collected a lot of information. So the actual number of people who contributed ideas and gave feedback was much higher than 200-something. Yeah. We asked for them to try to give us a more complete number on that because we know people are interested. They didn't have that number today, but hopefully they will.
Can I just thank Sue, honestly? 'Cause
Yes.
an entire day, but it's more than an entire day. I think she's really represented us so well on this committee, so thank you.
It's been, it's been a
thank you.
great group of people who come, and each person on it has a specific area of interest that's really important to them, but this group has done very well on trying to see the big picture,
That's great.
rather than each person just harping on their area of interest. So I think they're going to come out with a good tool that hopefully will help the town. All right, and then last night I went to the CHIPS PTO meeting. They also do a wonderful job of taking the PTO interests and working with the staff and deciding on things that the teachers want to have happen too. So they've been doing great work. They had, at their open house, they had a bake sale and raffles, and they raised over $900. A lot of that is being used to buy new toys, and that might just sound frivolous to people, but toys and play are the basis of that early childhood curriculum. So that they've been happy to get a lot of toys that are going to really work well from that the teachers wanted. So they wanted to share and make sure people knew that the money they spend on their baked goods is well spent. They've got a lot of enrichment things going on. They had Fire Safety Day in October. They had Animal Adventures come today to do a program for the kids. The way they work it there is because not every student attends every day. They kind of stagger, like they might have something on a Tuesday one month and on a Wednesday the next month, so that kids have opportunities to be part of as many of these enrichment opportunities as possible. They are really hoping in December to have something with music, and they are talking with Dr. Whittlesley right now to see if they can get middle school and/or high school students to come do, not a big program, but something. So they are in talks about seeing if they can make that happen for December and maybe some other times during the school year. So hopefully that will go forward. There's their next Spirit Day to wear their spirit wear is going to be on Tuesday, December 10th. And I'm just trying to see, though they're really grateful for the money that they get to help with teacher appreciation. So they're kicking up some ideas. They were disappointed to find out that there are no professional development days in May, because they were hoping to do a lunch on a professional development day, but they're going to have to pick a different date. They did ask me that when we're looking at the calendar for years going forward, that we don't have a month of May like we do now with not a single half day built into the calendar, the way it's working out this year. But, they'll work that out. They'll work that out. Yeah, so things are going well with them.
Yeah.
All right, John, anything? Okay, all right. I just, with our first meeting of the capital committee a week ago, we heard from department heads of police, the fire, library, CCA. This Thursday, Superintendent Lang will be presenting the school side of things, as well as Christine Clancy will do the town side of DPW and all that. And then the following meeting, which is in December, we'll decide on what projects to adopt. So it's a great group to work with. It's very comprehensive look at all the needs of the town, and, trying to prioritize where our money's gonna be spent, so.
That's great.
All right, anyone have any new items they would like on a future agenda or anything?
I have one, which is, I don't know if it's, there's no urgency to it right now, but just naming that now the legislature passed, after several years of advocacy, the Educator Diversity Act as of last week. And I would love to hear what the district is thinking about in terms of the implication for our district and the ways in which it might support what I know the goals of it are very synchronous with some of our district's own goals around having a more diverse and representative teaching staff. It really aligns with this new act. So I would love to hear what the district is thinking as more details about the implications come out. Similarly, around MCAS, dare I say, and what shifts eventually, again, probably nothing for right now, but what shifts may be implicated by the passing of ballot issue 2.
We're still waiting to kind of hear.
Yeah,
So
I know
as soon as we
it's
know-
early.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about the Educator Diversity Act passing. I knew it was on the docket for last spring, so let me do a little legwork on that. And then obviously, when we know more about MCAS, we'll share that too.
Yeah, the EDA was passed, my day job knew about it, but the EDA was passed as part of it was kind of included as part of a broader package so that they could get it through during this cycle.
Okay. Anybody else, any other items? Okay, I don't believe, there's no public comment here. I didn't get any emails, so we can move to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I wasn't here at the beginning, I don't feel like I have a right to say.
Just pass that around.